a lot of debate in academic circles about what the ratio of DHA to EPA is. Is it 4-to-1? Is it 1-to-4? Is it, and I'm like, my thing is 1-to-1, right?
Just get it as close as possible.
Just get it as close as possible. 1-to-1 of DHA to EPA, and I think you're going to have everything you need. You're going to have your pro-inflammatory, or you're going to have your inflammation resolution with EPA. You're going to have your brain and eye health. We talk a lot about eye health in kind of the modern health and wellness category, especially with all the screen time, right? It's all this blue light. So if we're kind of eliminating DHA in our diet until we get older, that's a lot of preventative maintenance that we're losing out on when it comes to our eye health. And, to me, it's like I spend way too much time on my phone anyway.
Yeah.
I need to be kind of combating that, and DHA is a great way to do it.
Ready to rock?
Let's do it.
Feel good. Right. Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Anders Varner. That's Doug Larson.
Yeah.
We're at Stratum Fitness, Solana Beach. The fittest people in the West Coast are like 2 miles away from us right now. We've been hanging out all day. We have a little sun-kissed bronze. We were hanging out in the SoCal sun in May. Still May, right?
It's May.
It is May.
That's why it's regionals.
We have a huge day today because we're taking a deep dive on fish oils. And look, everybody knows we should be taking fish oils, right? But no one really knows why. No one really knows, like, all the things that go into it. And
that's not true. He knows.
Evan Demarco actually knows all these things. So he's hanging out. He's head of product development marketing with Omax. And we're super stoked to have you here.
Thanks,
I'm
guys.
Really excited to dig into this. Not just, I feel like I've every time I hear a conversation about fish oils, everybody just jumps right into DHA, EPA. But getting into like the health benefits of it. And I always want to know the process of, like, where does it come from? How do we get the concentration? What fish am I really getting into? How are we farming these fish or fishing for these fish? Just what is the process to get it into the bottle? Because I have a decent understanding of the health benefits, but the process of it I have no clue about.
Mm-hmm. I definitely want to touch on the health benefits because I think there's still plenty of people out there that have heard of fish oil, but they just don't really know why they're supposed to be taking it. But more on the practical side, like, how much should I take? When should I be taking it? Can I take too much? Like, how do I know if it's, like, gone rancid or not? Like, are pills better than liquids? Like, on and on and on. Like, what are all the details as far as what the research says about how, when, and where, and who need to actually take fish oil on a daily basis?
Yeah. So how'd you get into this?
That's a great question. The long and short of it was I was actually making prenatal vitamins. And kind of prenatals have always had this DHA element to it.
Yeah.
But I was really looking at prenatal vitamins kind of very dispassionately. I'm just creating products. And then all of a sudden I found out I was going to be a father. It's like, oh, okay, let's really look at prenatal vitamins.
I've got 4 weeks, so just keep going. I'm learning as we walk through this right now.
Mm-hmm. I was actually telling his wife this morning, we were talking about fish oil, and she was saying how much she takes, and we are talking about dosages and whatnot. So I'd love to get your take on that, specifically for women that are pregnant and or have young kids. Maybe they're still breastfeeding, like, because I had 3 kids in 3 years and my kids are still very young, so I'd love to get your take on that as well.
Absolutely. So then all of a sudden I found out I'm going to be a dad, and it's like, wow, okay, prenatals suck. So then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a sec, I've got to make up for some serious genetic deficiencies, on my part in this kind of baby making equation. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and started really looking at all of the research out there. And DHA was only one part of the equation. And what we see is, like, DHA can really be improved if we add the right things to it. So the first thing that I added to that was alpha GPC. And I think anyone in the kind of the sports world knows, there's a lot of benefits for alpha GPC. But when we start looking at it from a the baby making perspective, there's an incredible brain boost that comes prenatal, postpartum, breastfeeding, lactation support. So that really became the catalyst of my venture down into DHA. And then I started working with the KD Pharma Group, which is the largest global manufacturer of prescription-grade omega products. So I got a deep dive on everything from, where the fish are caught, how they're manufactured, how, what are the appropriate ways to actually get that great fish oil into a bottle, and then learn the whole process. So in doing that, I've just spent the last couple of years really spending a lot of time focused on fish. How do we really incorporate fish oil into our diets? How do we make up for the omega-6 to the omega-3 ratio that seems to be a major problem in the modern Western diet? So yeah, that's kind of the 35,000 foot view of how I got into this. And
well, you already touched on it, but where did the fish come from? What in the bottle? What is the process from? I mean, I feel like it's almost like we talk about fish oil, but nobody realizes that a fish had to have been caught.
Exactly. Yeah.
To get it into the bottle, we had to find a fish first. Like, I take 10 fish oil pills a day. It's like, that's a fish.
Yeah.
Where did the fish come from?
Where did the fish come from? And that's a great question. So fish are sourced all over the world, but the predominant and most environmentally friendly source of fish come from like the waters off of Chile and Peru.
Okay.
So those are anchovies and sardines, and those really have the highest concentration of those omegas that we're looking for. But when we talk about concentration, it's still not that great, right? So they go out and they catch all these fish and they take them to a fish factory and they literally just press them. So now you've got fish oil and you've got fish meal, and that fish meal is sent off for things like fertilizer, pet food, things like that. That fish oil is what we call 1812 or crude oil. And what that 1812 is representative of is the concentration of EPA and DHA, 18% EPA, 12% DHA, for a total of about 30%. So the rest of that 70% is all your sat fats, your cholesterol, your pro-inflammatory omega-6.
Cool.
So if you go to Costco and you buy your 12-year supply of fish oil for $4, chances are that's what you're getting. It's going to be mildly refined. It's going to take out some of the environmental toxins, but by and large, it's going to be kind of that just basic crude oil. So the further up the value chain you go, the more expensive fish oil you buy, the more you're going to see that concentration level has been improved. We go in and we take out all of that bad stuff, that 70%, saturated fat, pro-inflammatory omega-6, and you get a better oil that way. So, a lot of what we talk about, and we can get into this a little bit more, is what are you buying when you buy fish oil? What quality are you getting? Because, if you really want a fish oil, but you've got kind of this modern Western diet, and you go get that cheap stuff, it's almost kind of, counterproductive.
You're almost adding to the problem.
Really?
What is the process from? So we're in this factory, I assume. Everything gets squished together. We've got our crude fish oil coming up. How is that process, like, from down there to here into the bottling? Where's the shipping process? I honestly have no idea how we get it into the bottle.
So KD Pharma Group is located in Bexbach, Germany,
Cool.
which is the most landlocked area, I think, in Europe. So you get all this fish oil that goes from South America across the ocean to Bexbach, Germany. And there they employ 5 different types of distillation processes. So you take this oil and you can run it through urea precipitation, silver extraction, supercritical chromatography, superfluid chromatography, and all of these, different extraction methods are used to basically extract out the constituent parts of your omega. So your EPA, your DHA, your DPA. And then what you're left with are just kind of these fractions of this main oil.
Awesome.
So then you've got barrels of all of this oil, and then you can kind of blend it back together for its constituent parts, for whatever you want it to be. If you want like a prenatal, high DHA, maybe a little EPA. If you're looking for pro-inflammatory, you get more EPA. Jorn Dyerberg, Dr. Jorn Dyerberg, who's kind of considered the father of omegas, was the guy that went off and lived with the Inuit tribes for a while and kind of discovered that their cardiovascular rates were so low because they were eating all of this seal. And seal's actually high in DPA. Problem is most people don't want to go out and club a baby seal to get their DPA.
Sounds like a hassle.
Yeah, it is a problem.
It is a problem.
And in Southern
You can't
California, we
post
don't
that on
have.
Instagram.
No one. You don't want to go to La Jolla Cove and just start bashing seals out there. People have a problem with it.
Yeah, they're like, but wait, I need the DPA.
That's for my health.
I'm here for the fish oil.
So interestingly enough, now we're actually able to extract DPA from fish and kind of concentrate that up. So we're looking at this whole spectrum of omegas. Now you've got this fish oil and whatever blend, a company wants, and whether that's a Metagenics, a Vitamin Shop, whatever it is, whatever brand you've got, they're going to have a unique blend of oils. So then that either can go in a soft gel, it can go in a liquid, it can go, there's a bunch of different delivery systems.
If you are part of kind of not specifically you, but companies that are doing this, is there maybe the opportunity or a problem in this market in that process of like cutting the fish oil in half and putting fillers in there? Or I feel like I'm the more I dig into some of the food industry stuff, whether it's like honey, I don't know, just you hear about these processes where they're cutting it. It's almost like it's like a drug trade almost. It's like they're cutting it, adding corn syrup or something like that to extend the life of whatever supply they have. Is that a problem in this industry?
Not necessarily so much in fish oil. A lot of the manufacturers of fish oil are, coming from Europe or they're U.S. So they're all exacting standards. They're using GOED, which is kind of the international body that oversees all of that. So a lot of your specs, a lot of the testing that's done on that really becomes indicative of what you're going to get in that finished product. There is some stuff from China. And unfortunately that's the issue is that will be like that. It'll say it's, an 80% concentrate, and then you find out it's 40, and you look at it and there's corn oil, something in there. Luckily in the fish oil industry, it is pretty regulated, so you don't see it as much as you would in kind of the supplement industry, but it still exists. And that's why I always say is like go with a good reputable brand, and you're going to be solid.
Is there really much of a difference getting it in a liquid form versus a gel cap type form?
I always look at, how often are you taking it and, kind of what's its exposure. A lot of people will, once you open a liquid bottle, it's going to start to oxidize. Mm-hmm. So if you're kind of letting that sit around for 30 days, it's going to kind of go rancid. That is the issue with it. Whereas if you go with like soft gels, you're going to have just better long-term stability on that. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, I think if you're taking your fish oil daily and you've got a 30-day supply, the reality of it going rancid in 30 days is pretty low. But if you're one of those people, it's like, I might take it once a week. After 3 to 4 months, you're going to open that thing up and be like, whoa.
Yeah. Actually, just this morning or maybe yesterday, I was saying to Andrew's wife, because she's pregnant right now, so she's wanting to take some amount of DHA, and she had a bottle on the counter, and she was asking if she should put it in the fridge or leave it on the counter. And I was saying, well, they're highly unsaturated, heat, light, moisture. That's why the bottle's like, basically black. It's trying to like block out light. The colder you keep it, the less likely it is to go bad, just because it's at a colder temperature. But by the time it gets to your house, like I have no idea how long that's been like sitting in a warehouse that's 100 degrees or what have you. Like, how do you know if it's not rancid like before it gets to you? Like, is it a long process, but going from like fish to your house, like buying it through a retailer?
Yeah, it can be. It's not like it's not like that fish gets pressed and then it's air freighted to Germany and
right to your house.
Yeah, right.
Drop shipping from Chile.
Exactly. There's a guy that's putting it in a bottle and just shipping it right off to you. No, and that unfortunately with kind of the mart of commerce right now being Amazon or e-com, you don't know. I mean, if you're living in Phoenix in August and all of a sudden you're ordering fish oil online, how long has that fish oil been sitting on a UPS truck?
I was just in Phoenix, and if you have fish oil sitting just on your front doorstep for 10 minutes, it's probably bad.
Yeah.
It's 1,000,000 degrees there, and it's only May.
Yeah.
The fish, there's no way it makes it an afternoon.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Like,
it's terrible.
I mean, you literally open the bottle and be like, whoa, okay.
Bad.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, that my recommendation too on stuff like that is you don't know, right? So err on the side of caution. If you live in Phoenix in May, June, July, August, go to a retailer and buy it. Chances are they're going to have a better supply chain to get it to that shop, or just go in January to the store and stock up. But yeah, there's a process there that if it's not done properly, one of the things that we do is we always flush it with argon gas. So we're protecting it. There's a lot of protectants that typically go in fish oil, and that could be vitamin E, that could be some kind of mixed tocopherol to keep it fresh, but you can't beat Mother Nature or go head to head with Mother Nature.
You're flushing it with argon gas, so there's no oxygen.
Correct. And then there are some companies like the Chinese companies or some of the cheaper companies that will use nitrogen, but you get this barrel of fish oil, and the second you take the top off, the nitrogen goes poof, whereas argon's heavier, so it just kind of keeps this nice blanket over the top of it to keep it fresh. So those are all things that you can look at, but it's always going to come down to price, right? When you look at fish oil, the more expensive chances are going to be the ones that use those supply chain improvements to make sure you get a better product.
Right. I mean, speaking of heat, like I know with other types of industrial seed oils and whatnot for corn oil or soybean oil or vegetable oil or what have you, like as a part of the process of distilling those into like a light yellow clear liquid that looks good on the shelf, they have to bleach and deodorize and put solvents in it and all these different things, and as a part of those processes, oftentimes they're subjected to relatively high temperatures, 400, 500, 600 degrees. Like with fish oil being very highly unsaturated, they wouldn't tolerate high heats very well. So when they're distilling the oil, like, is it just like a cold press?
Typically? Yeah, typically the best ways to do that are that supercritical, that superfluid. So you're just using CO2. It's a cold process to extract it. So you're not doing exactly that. It's subjecting it to those high heats, which are going to break it down and obviously, create a lot of those issues that you just spoke about.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier how they separate into 3 pieces, like EPAs on one, DHAs on the other, and you can play with some of the amounts for like prenatal.
Uh-huh.
What are some of the other? What are the processes that they're doing to separate that? You had some really cool words that I was like, I have to come back and ask them that. But why is the prenatal one more DHA versus EPA? And what are the other reasons in which you would fluctuate with those amounts?
Again, it really just depends. So there's 22,000 clinical studies on the benefits of omegas, and the problem is that you've got DPA, you've got DHA, you've got EPA, you've got all of these different parts, constituent parts of omegas. So that clinical research is varying in what the outcomes are based off of the specific product. So what we do know is DHA is great for prenatal because of brain and eye health. So a lot of your brain omegas, a lot of your eye omegas, all of that development is based off of DHA. As we get older, and pain, inflammation resolution becomes more of an issue. That's where we see EPA having more of a profound impact. So a lot of it is just, well, what are we really looking at? What are you as a consumer wanting to do with your specific omegas, and then look at the type of products that are available in the market to address those needs.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Is there really a need to supplement with the plant version of omega-3s, like alpha-linolenic acid and all the intermediates that are on the way to EPA and DHA?
Absolutely, and we look at the biology of that, and most people, like on the best side, are converting ALA to at about 10%. So you get a lot of these vegans like, oh no, I get my omegas from chia and flax. Well, the problem is that if you're only converting at best 10% of those, you're probably going to end up being deficient based off of the WHO, the FDA, all of these universal standards for what our daily omega intake is. So unfortunately, as much as I love my vegan friends, I have to tell them, it's like,
those damn hippies.
Yeah, it ain't getting it done, guys. It's like, I'm sorry, and luckily there's some algae sources that are coming out that we're able to concentrate up. But if you're just getting your DHA or omegas from flax or chia, it ain't happening.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a big push lately. I mean, since the paleo thing kind of showed up, it wasn't just in the CrossFit community, but when the paleo thing happened and there was like Paleo Solution comes out, all of a sudden there was a ton of attention on this. There was just a massive rise in understanding the benefits of omega-3s. And where is that conversation gone in the last 5-6 years? And I guess keeping up with the demand has got to be a challenging thing.
It is, and let's talk a little bit about the diet piece of that, because that's a great question. And to do that, I think let's go back in time 200 years, where if we look at the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, the average ratio at that time was about 1-to-1. And we know that kind of keeps inflammation resolution in check. So when we fast forward 100 years, early 1900s, and it kind of spikes to 4-to-1. People are starting to enjoy more red meats. We're starting to see more dairy come into the diet, and so that omega-6, omega-3 ratio kind of starts to get a little out of whack. Right now, we guess it at around 25-to-1. That's just hyper pro-inflammatory, right? And so, basically, so the emergence of some of these paleo diets are great, but oftentimes they're misunderstood. And I always tell this story of my best friend of like 30 years who, this is about 12 years ago, he decides he wants to get married. And at the time, he's a little out of shape, college athlete, but kind of let himself go, started enjoying too many Coors Lights every day after work. So pops the question, says, hey, I need to get in shape for the wedding. I'm like, all right, I'll come by tomorrow morning. We'll go to the gym, get a plan in place. Walk in his house. He's sitting on the floor in front of his coffee table with ESPN on, eating a plate of bacon and cheese. And I'm looking at him like, we're supposed to be at the gym in 5 minutes. He's like, dude, it's on the Atkins diet. I'm like, oh God, But this is the problem, right? Is we get all of these diet fads, and they're fundamentally misunderstood.
Yeah.
So paleo, just some of these keto kind of diets is like, if we don't follow them properly, or if our bodies just aren't set up to really process those kind of diets, then we start to see that omega-6, omega-3 ratio go completely out of whack.
Just as context, can you walk through the differences kind of between omega-3, omega-6, and the actual ratio that we see in nature versus what happens when you see a ton of corn-fed cow meat, that what you're usually buying in the store is so far from what is supposed to be part of nature? And what are the problems that can come along with that imbalance?
Well, and you know, that's a great question. So not only do you have all of the processed meat, you know, the corn fed, all of the stuff that's really going to contribute to that, you know, pro-inflammatory omega-6. And omega-6s are great, right?
Yeah.
You know, all of these omegas, the 6s, the 9s, all of those, they all have their unique component within our body. But when we start eating too much corn, when we start eating too much beef, when we start eating too much dairy, that's when we start to see those. And part of it is just that, you know, as human beings, we've always lived close to the water. We're by and large, I think, kind of predetermined to eat fish, to eat, you know, kind of this more Mediterranean diet. You know, and then, you know, everyone comes here to the United States, and we've got all these landlocked states, and everyone's eating cow and dairy. And so we start to see these, you know, these patterns that evolve, and a lot of it's the breads, it's the processed grains and all of that. So I think just really looking at what it means to take a step back from our diet. If you're going to eat beef, don't do it every single day.
Yeah.
You know, I know everyone's into their keto diets and whatnot, or paleo, but it's like, you know, cow every single day, probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, variety in general. Try and
Variety
get
in
some.
general. Yeah. And if you are going to do it, the grass-fed is great. Go with the grass-fed.
Yeah, and I think it was Mike that was talking to us, and he just tried for a couple months to not eat chicken, beef, and pork. And you don't realize that that's what you've been eating every single day, 3 times a day for your entire life. And you go and try and find something that isn't one of those 3. It's an incredibly challenging. Like, you're in the weird part of the grocery store, getting like a frozen block of like venison.
Tofu.
Yeah, like what am I going to eat? Like, it's literally chicken, beef, or pork, and those are your options. But if you were out in nature, you'd have a lot of things that you could go hunt, kill, fish. So getting back to, I guess, the differences in the omega-3, what is the natural balance in nature, or the
1 to
natural
1.
balance in nature?
1 to 1.
1 to 1.
Yeah, and that's kind of optimal. Even 4 to 1 is still going to be fairly healthy,
Yeah.
but once we get above that, I think
The 25 to 1 is the bad spot.
that's the bad spot. That's the way bad spot.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, you talk about chicken, beef, or pork. That's like every day I'm going to Chipotle and choosing either one of, one of those.
When we have a good fish oil pill, we're probably getting somewhere in the 2 to 1, 3 to 1, right?
Most of the time, actually, what you're doing is you're going to be kind of pushing the pendulum back the other side. So if you get a really good fish oil pill, you're not going to have any of that omega-6 in there.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we look to do with that omega-6, or that, you know, that high concentrate omega, is to offset the imbalances that that most Americans are suffering with. So if you're getting rid of all of that pro-inflammatory omega-6 and you've got a really solid omega-3, you're going to be kind of offsetting a lot of that bad diet decisions.
But if we get into the kind of the poor quality omega-3 or fish oil pills, you're actually, like you were saying earlier, you start to counterbalance what you're trying to do because they're so so bad at having that natural balance in there.
Yeah, you just end up exacerbating the whole situation. So as much as I love Costco, you know, don't get that.
It's Costco. Think about how, this is the freakiest thing about Costco. Think about how many eggs are in a Costco right now. Colton, behind the camera over here, is eating like 16 eggs a day.
You can tell looking at
look
him.
at the traps on
That's
that
why
kid.
he's shredded.
Yeah, his kid barely has a T-shirt on ever.
And all he does is record Barbell Shrugged and go surfing.
Dude,
he's living the life.
And the
Are you
Instagram
hiring?
thing. Yeah, seriously. We're all trying to work for him. Wrong sex. But when you get into Costco, like, in order for them to be able to produce things of that magnitude, it can't be the highest quality, because where are you going to find that many awesome chickens? Where the fish oil pill is going to come from that are at that high quality? It's just not possible if you're buying stuff from those stores.
Yeah, distributing to the masses.
Yeah, it's impossible.
I used to buy fish oil from Costco all the time, like back in college. And one thing that I noticed is, like, kind of the regular pills, to your point, you know, they're about 30%. So 1 gram pill, there's 300 milligrams of EPA and DHA, is about 50% more EPA than DHA, the ratio you talked about earlier, the 18-12. And then if you got like the double strength, then in some cases it would go up proportionally, but then if you got like the triple strength, then it was like almost all added EPA and no additional DHA. Is that just a cost thing?
Most of the time, yeah, it's a cost thing, and a lot of the times, you know, because there's more natural EPA in the fish, you know, that's where it is. Is it just costs more to extract DHA and you know, make that into a pill. So if you follow the math of that, if it's in abundance, then. But then, interestingly enough, you know, Lavazza, Vasepa, some of these pharmaceutical strength omega products. So if you go to the doctor and they're like, hey, you have high cholesterol, they might put you on a fish oil. and that's a prescription grade product. Your insurance is going to cover it, and that's all EPA. I mean, it's just straight 90%, 90% EPA.
That's because they're looking for the anti-inflammatory properties.
Yeah, and the cardiovascular benefits. And so when we look at the research and the literature on that, that's where we really start to see some of the cardiovascular benefits. Now, here's something interesting too. If we really want to talk to talk to your viewers,
we do.
When you look at that label, so you're going to get further up the higher concentrate you go, the more money it's going to be. But then you also have ethyl ester versus triglyceride form. So your fish oil, when it comes out of that fish, is triglyceride. But to concentrate it up, you have to enzymatically change it to this ethyl ester, concentrate it up, and then most of the companies, because of the cost, will just leave it at that. So there's an interesting thing, and if you kind of Google it, you can see like fish oil in like a styrofoam cup, and that ethyl ester will actually start to eat the styrofoam cup. Now, the thing is, the triglyceride form will do it as well.
Terrifying.
It just won't do it as quickly. So we know that there's some interesting bioavailability pieces when it comes to triglyceride versus ethyl ester. So, I always recommend, it's like if you're looking at high quality, look at the back and make sure it says triglyceride, not ethyl ester. And that's just an additional process that we have to go through. It's like once we concentrate it up to 90%, then we have to convert it back to the triglyceride form.
Right on. So wait, the ethyl ester is a phospholipid?
No.
Is that not the same thing?
No, it's not. No. But that's a really interesting question because we look at a lot of these phospholipid forms, right? And krill is a perfect example. Is this phospholipid omega.
Started seeing a lot more of the krill showing up.
Yeah. And I'm not a fan.
Gotta
tell you.
Hold on, why not?
Shots fired.
Hold up. What is good about it? Why are we seeing it all over the place? And then why are you not a fan?
Well, the thing that's good about it is the phospholipid form. So we know that from a bioavailability, ethyl ester, not so great. Triglyceride a little bit better. Phospholipid even better. Now the problem with the phospholipid, krill is that it's not concentrated, right? So, if you're only getting 70 milligrams of an omega,
right,
and the WHO or the FDA says you need to be 400, I don't care how bioavailable it is, you're still going to be deficient. So then all of a sudden you just start taking a lot more krill. Whereas if we look at some of these structured lipids, right, binding an omega with a phosphatidylcholine or an alpha GPC or phosphatidylserine, you get like these multi-mode of action products, which are really cool. It's like brain health, cardiovascular, everything that goes along with it. So, nature has done well with the krill. I also don't necessarily like the impact to our oceans that comes with, sourcing some of that. Anchovy sardines a lot more abundant. There's a lot more structure that goes into protecting those supply chains. Krill, not so much. So let's let science really kind of take the next evolutionary leap when it comes to our omegas. Use a structured lipid with a phosphatidylcholine or alpha GPC or something like that.
Right on. We're gonna take a little break here.
Let's do it.
We have to talk about whatever. We're gonna go right to you after the break, but we have to talk about how much of this fish oil peel we're supposed to be taking. Because if you are like me, when the paleo thing happened, I was like, you know what? I should probably start my regimen at 20 pills. You're going to have a disaster.
More is better.
You will be sitting at your desk at work, and things are going to go bad really quickly. We'll be back in a second. Welcome to the Shrugged Collective Program Vault. Over the last 6 years, we've been leading the charge in online strength and conditioning programming and coaching. And for the first time in the history of the Shrugged Collective, we're combining our 11 best-selling long-term and short-term accessory programs into one membership site called the Program Vault. From Olympic weightlifting to strongman, leaning out, nutrition, you name it, our 11 best-selling programs are yours for $47 a month. Get to shruggedcollective.com/vault, and you will find immediate access to our 11 best-selling strength and conditioning programs. I need a microphone big enough so they know I shit my pants. Welcome back to Barbell Shrugged. It's about to get weird.
Let's hear it.
We're hanging out.
Now's your chance. Tell the world.
Right, yeah. So
it wasn't your fault.
Yeah, it was not my fault. I blame Rob Wolf. Rob Wolf, if you're listening right now, this is your fault. The paleo movement happened, and it also happened right at the same time of like my training was going really well, diet was getting dialed in. The paleo solution came out, and it was like, you have to be taking, I was learning about the natural balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. And I was like, you know what? I eat a lot of red meat these days, trying to put on weight, trying to get stronger, faster than everyone else. And I was literally eating like 3 pounds of red meat a day.
Holy cow.
I would go to the Sprouts and I would buy that like the 1 pound thing of grass-fed beef, and I was rather broke at the time, and I would literally take the 1 pound and just turn it over onto the Foreman, close the lid, cook it, lay cheese on top, lay guacamole on top, and I was paleo. Like, you couldn't be more off in, like, health and longevity, but I was getting yoked at the time. So it had to have been worth it.
I bet your colon loved you.
Oh, well, here you go. So my roommate and also the co-owner of the gym with me, we started, like, learning about fish oils. And it was like, you know what? Anytime, like, I take any pill whatsoever, it's like, here's the recommended amount. Well, you're not a meathead, and you don't do what I do, so I need double for sure. Minimum double. So, like, I was, like, reading the recommended amount of fish oils, and I was like, yeah, right. I'll take 20. So I literally wake up, have, like, my eggs, have my normal breakfast, 20 fish oils go down. And I'm sitting at my desk at work. Luckily, I was working from home, but my roommate, co-owner of the gym, we still had 2 jobs. And I was working from home. He was at his office, and I went to go fart. And I swear I shit my pants. And it was like only fish oil. There was no other things. It was just like undigested fish oils coming out of me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm 28 years old and I just shit my pants at work. And I texted him. I was like, dude, I just shit my pants. And he goes, you know what? I just shit my pants too. He was actually at the office and has to run home to get new clothes because he can't walk around and like, you just reek of fish oil. Like, it's a disaster.
Did you text him before you cleaned up? Did you shit your pants and then
I don't
start
know.
texting
I don't know.
immediately?
Well, I was at home, so all I had to do was like throw some stuff in the wash. It was like my disaster was a lot less than his. But how much of fish oil are people supposed to be taking so they don't have to go through this disaster? That's sticking around forever.
Learn from his mistake.
Yeah, do not take 20 on day 1, or you will have a disaster. You will shit your pants, and it will be a disaster.
Yeah. And you know, those are 2 smells that don't go well.
They stick around.
Exactly.
You can't get the oil out.
No.
It's not like regular shit. Like if you have a kid or something, I'm sure you can like get it out. Not the oil. It's stuck in the cloth.
It permeates. Yeah. You just got to burn that stuff.
We're here, folks. We're here for you. Having the people's conversation.
This is real world advice, people.
No science here, just real life practical experiences. But what is sort of the recommended amount of like where people should start? Slowly, yeah. So you know, that a great question, right? One I get all the time. So when we really look at let's start with let's kind of back into this, right? So the upper recommended, you know, kind of like level that people say you should be at is like 3 grams. That's a lot. And a lot of people, if you go out and you take 3 grams, and I don't know what kind of fish oil you're taking, you're going to have that. You're going to have some serious GI distress. So now the WHO, you know, the FDA, they kind of have their limits on you know, where our minimum recommended daily should be, right around 450, 500 milligrams. That's kind of low. But I always say, you know, start there. Start and kind of work your way up, right? Because you never know how that stuff's going to impact your system. And especially if you take it on an empty stomach, you've had some weird food, you know, whatnot. Let your body kind of acclimate to that. So, you know, high concentrate, triglyceride form, 450 milligrams, depending on, you know, if you're going EPA, DHA, whatnot, and then, you know, work your way up. I think 2,000 is probably great. You know, if you're training a lot, you know, you're really looking for some muscle protein synthesis, you know, really trying to improve your BCAA supplementation. You know, 3 grams is not out of whack. I've been heavy training where I've done 3 grams, and it's been great, but, yeah, again, I've also done. I haven't crapped myself, but I've come close where, you know, you're puckering as you were running to the bathroom. It's frightening.
You
don't know that's coming, and then all of a sudden, a lot of us have been there. I can't be the only one. If you're out there and listening to this on your way to work, please just write me something and tell me I'm not the only one that this has happened to. I can't be there.
So outside of supplementation, like if you eat an 8-ounce steak of salmon, like at a restaurant, like how much are you getting roughly? Would you get around 3 grams?
No, not even close. You know, typically, and again, it just depends on, is that farm raised? Is it, you know, wild? Is it, where is it caught? You know, type of thing. So there's all of these different variances that come into, you know, kind of the natural of what you're getting. But, you know, I think a fillet of salmon is an 8-ounce fillet. I want to say 1,500. I don't think it's at that upper limit.
Okay, so about half.
About half.
What you would need.
Yeah, but that's that's the total omegas of it, right? So that's 1,500 milligrams of total of omegas, and so now when you back out all of your other things in there, your saturated fats, everything, it's like how much omega-3, or omega-3s are you really getting? And again, that's a variable, but you could be down 300 to 400.
Okay, and then the other question that I'm curious about, like if you're supposed to get, we'll go with the 3 just because it's an easy number. Like if you're supposed to have a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3 and omega-6, and you're only getting 3 grams is like on the high end of omega-3s, like how do you structure your diet where you only get 3 grams of omega-6? That's a rough number to hit, I feel like.
It is, yeah, and that's where especially if you're paleo or you're keto or whatnot, you really have to pay attention to that, and that's where again I always look at Mediterranean diets as great, right? You're looking at a lot of the vegetables, the things that are not going to be hyper omega-6 rich. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to the store and just getting like a bunch of steak and Foreman grilling that with cheese, there's no way. And actually, there's a lot of science on this, and there's a lot of speculation. So 1-to-1 is what I say, just because we're so pro-inflammatory right now. But I think 4-to-1 is still a very healthy ratio. Some people even say 10-to-1. I just base it off of, what is your lifestyle like? Are you coming into a health journey where you've been living off McDonald's for the last 10 years? Go 1-to-1. Start really working at cutting out a lot of that pro-inflammatory. Focus on the vegetables. Focus on things that don't have a lot of those omega-6s. If you've been healthy for a long time, don't be afraid that, if you're 4-to-1 or you're 10-to-1, that you're going to be destined for an early grave.
Yeah.
So to get the optimum ratio of fatty acids in your diet, like what does like a breakfast, lunch, dinner look like in your mind?
That's a great question. And I think it's, each person is different. Interestingly enough, I just took my microbiome test. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Viome.
Yeah.
So this was fascinating, right? I get this list of things that based off of my gut, I thought were hyper healthy. And it turns out, no, like I shouldn't be touching kale.
We're going to do this soon.
Yeah, I totally want to do that.
I had a buddy that just recently did it, and he was like mind blown of
I'll send you
all
guys
the
the
things.
test.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's incredible. So, and again, my grandparents were always concerned about cholesterol. So they're like, oh, you can't eat eggs, and I get my cholesterol test, I'm fine. And I eat eggs like I buy them at Costco.
Yeah.
So to me, it's
yeah, Colton.
I think eggs. I try to avoid sugar. That's my big thing. So if I'm eating eggs, any kind of protein in the morning, I always like to kind of glycogen spare. So if I'm going to have any carbs, I start off with like oatmeal in the morning, and then I'll start to taper off. Always like to really pack on the vegetables, and then nighttime for me is always kind of like fish, chicken, things like that. Again, for me, it's always about avoiding sugar. And what I got out of that microbiome test is sugar does not agree with me. Beer and wine, forget about it. It's like stick to hard alcohol if you're going to drink, which was kind of interesting. I mean, things that we intuitively might guess, but then but yeah, it was just, it really is kind of this fascinating look at what works for each individual person. So when we start talking about diet trends, I'm like, well, those are great, but how does your unique microbiome work within that diet trend? So I always recommend these cool diagnostic tools. It's like, take a look at what's going on in your gut, and then you can start to kind of tailor your diet based off of that. If you want to go paleo, if you want to go keto, take those diet recommendations based off that test, and then really start to, kind of optimize your diet so it works well for you.
It seems like everything we're doing right now starts to come back to the gut. And but you keep mentioning inflammation. And one of the things, especially in our community with our audience, they're training hard. We squat a lot. We're doing Olympic lifting. And a lot of times that inflammation is just showing up in joint pain. And that's one thing that omega-3s and fish oils do a great job of helping eliminate.
Yeah.
Is there a bunch of science behind that, or is that just practical kind of knowledge, just getting rid of the inflammation? How on like a performance side can fish oils help people? There's
a ton of science behind that, and I think obviously you've got a background in this as well, but when we really look at it, there's a couple great studies. One is the DOM study that came out of Europe, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, and it really looks at post-workout inflammation, and a large part of that is, right, okay, your muscles are sore, you've got your microscopic tears there. We talk about sarcopenia, right? Age-related muscle protein breakdown. As you kind of get late 20s, early 30s, you're just not repairing your muscles the way that you once did. So everyone's taking their BCAAs, wherever they're getting those, it doesn't matter. Those are pretty standard across the board. But As we get older, we recognize that we don't synthesize those as well as we once did. So fish oil becomes a huge catalyst for improving BCAA supplementation. A lot of studies on that. So we start talking about joint pain, right? You get inflammation in the joints. Your tendons are inflamed, especially with some of those compound, really complex lifts that, Olympic style is doing. It's not the old going to the gym, get on the treadmill for 20 minutes, whatnot. I mean, this is serious working your body. And so I think as a result of that, we are starting to see more chronic inflammation. And people, unfortunately, have always thought of fish oil as like, oh, I take that when I'm I'm 50, I'm 60 or whatnot. So it's up to us, kind of this community, to really recognize that if you're going to be doing these type of workouts, take the supplements that are going to improve your performance and your recovery. And that's really what it's about, right? It's, you can't keep coming to the gym day after day if you're not recovering.
Mm-hmm. Does it change kind of the amount that they should be taking if there's a health and longevity approach versus a performance approach?
I think so. There's Omax has a really cool product. It's a Max Recovery, and it's 2 grams of 93.9% concentrate EPA. And what we found in sports performance is that really seems to move the needle as far as recovery. If you're looking for general maintenance, and I think you're just generally healthy, have a decent diet, I think, 1 to 2 grams a day is still going to be pretty solid. But if you're training like you guys are talking about, I think that 2 grams a day or up to 3, depending on if your gut can handle it, really becomes a good starting place.
When you got into your gut health test, what comes back kind of on the oil side with just microbiome? And I've actually never thought about those two being connected. I thought it was more of like the kombucha or taking gut pills, probiotics.
Okay, so here's interesting. I had my 4-year-old daughter take it.
Nice.
And it gives you such this incredible in-depth look at what's going on in your gut. For instance, I found out that she's eating way too much microwave food. So those type of things will actually show up in your gut.
Those little critters in there will talk about everything. They will find you.
Too much food that's being microwaved, and that's a problem, or too much food that's like in a microwave, like a plastic tray that's being microwaved.
It's actually food that has been microwaved.
Oh, wow.
And your gut will actually pick up on that. And so these small little, it's all about small corrections, right? So when we look at our fish oil, we look at, inflammatory markers that take place in our gut, that you can see that in there. And so some of the recommendations that'll come out of that is you absolutely need to increase your polyunsaturated fatty acids. You need to decrease your omega-6s. All of that inflammation can sit right there. And it's, so again, it's very specific to each person, but the test was really cool in looking at like, okay, my omegas are great. I take a lot of them. My omega-6 was actually a little high, which was kind of interesting. So like, all right, I need to, but I travel a lot. I'm not using that as an excuse, but it's like you're always in a hotel and it's like, all right, well, it's the cheeseburger or the steak, what am I getting for dinner? And, so.
I believe I remember reading a study a while back where they were talking about DHA specifically being a structural component of your nervous system, your brain, your spinal cord, et cetera. In order to build a healthy brain, you have to have DHA. It's a part of the building blocks. It's the bricks in the wall, so to speak. There are other things in there too, but DHA is one of the things that it's harder to come by. And so moms that supplement with DHA, third trimester, when they're breastfeeding, their kids were smarter. I think it was in verbal fluency by age 5 or something like that compared to other kids that were in the control. And then same thing with older people. Like the people that were supplementing with DHA or had higher DHA diets tended to delay dementia, and so they stayed cognitively aware longer than the people that didn't. So that makes me assume that everyone in between babies and old people probably could benefit cognitively from taking DHA as well, but I haven't actually seen any research on it. Do you know anything about cognition and DHA?
Oh, absolutely, and I'm glad you talked about that because one of the prenatal products that I developed, what we call Alpha and Omega, is just that. It's DHA, which is the building blocks of your brain. And the European Food Safety Agency released a report a couple of years ago on breastfeeding, healthy breastfeeding, and it was all about DHA and choline. Those are the 2 key components that they found were, the essential in healthy brain development. So you start taking those in, prenatal vitamins. You want to be building up those stores. You want baby to be getting those during gestation and then in breastfeeding. Sorry, I lost my words there for a second.
You're good.
And then, as you said, you get down towards the end of life and people start taking it, but there's all this research in the middle that says, optimal brain function still requires DHA. It still requires choline. It still requires, a lot of these constituent parts of this alpha and omega. So there's a lot of debate in academic circles about what the ratio of DHA to EPA is. Is it 4-to-1? Is it 1-to-4? Is it, and I'm like, my thing is 1-to-1, right?
Just get it as close as possible.
Just get it as close as possible. 1-to-1 of DHA to EPA, and I think you're going to have everything you need. You're going to have your pro-inflammatory, or you're going to have your inflammation resolution with EPA. You're going to have your brain and eye health. We talk a lot about eye health in kind of the modern health and wellness category, especially with all the screen time, right? It's all this blue light. So if we're kind of eliminating DHA in our diet until we get older, that's a lot of preventative maintenance that we're losing out on when it comes to our eye health. And, to me, it's like I spend way too much time on my phone anyway.
Yeah.
I need to be kind of combating that, and DHA is a great way to do it.
You mentioned some of the cardiovascular benefits of having omega-3s. Can you get into the science of that?
Yeah, fish oil is good for your heart.
Yeah, very good. But
that's all you need to know.
Yeah, there you go. Do it. But I guess even from the health and longevity side, kind of the performance side of things, I love just seeing kind of along that spectrum. Like, we know people need to be taking this. You're going to live a better life having a much more balanced nutrition. But I guess if you're taking a health and longevity approach to this, what is like the cardiovascular benefits? What can people actively see or feel when they start doing this?
That's the interesting thing about omegas, and I think we'll address that in two parts, right? So the interesting thing about omegas is if you have joint pain, if whatever, you take an omega, you're not going to feel it right away.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately is the problem with modern Western society, is it's the pain pill versus the supplement. It's like, oh, I'm in pain, I need to go to the NSAIDs, the whatever that is. And that becomes kind of counteractive if you're doing it, or counterproductive if you're doing it on a long enough timeline. Omegas take a while, and there's a really cool test out there. It's called Omega Quant, and I always recommend people take this. It's literally you prick your finger at home, send a dried blood sample in, and they give you what's called an Omega Index score. The average American is right around 2.5 to 3 on this score, which is kind of a composition of omega-6 to omega-3 ratios, your blood lipid profiles, a lot of different things. What their research of 30 years has determined is that if you reach an 8, you're 5 times more likely to get to your 80s without incidence of cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, or stroke. But that can take 6 to 12 months of heavy supplementation of omegas to get there. And so we, as kind of the society, like, oh, well, I took this omega, I didn't feel anything, I'm going to go back to my my NSAIDs. So I always say, stay on it. Let like a test like that, Omega Quant or a microbiome test, really show you what you're doing with that. So then, what was the question though? I went off the rails there.
I don't even remember.
I don't remember either.
I just love that there's one of the things that I love about the health and longevity side.
The
cardiovascular side. But I love that in these approaches, and when you're talking about fish oils and actually like the building blocks of what's going on inside you, it's a system approach, and it's not just a pill that's going to make you feel better instantly. And it's a really hard message to get out to people. But getting kind of back to the health and longevity side of it, if you do this, it's not like you're going to live 10 extra days. Like, everybody wants this tangible thing. But are there, when you're testing biomarkers, are there things that people can look for to see, oh, wow, this is significantly better, there's significantly less inflammation, my blood pressure's lower? Are there going to be biomarkers that come back?
Cholesterol is going to be a big one.
Awesome.
So we're always going to look at a cholesterol, the LDL, HDL, component there. C-reactive protein, homocysteine markers, which are going to be your general inflammation markers, are going to be great things to look at. And again, that test, the omega test, really just looking at the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. Now, we talk about its impact on the cardiovascular system, and outside of the cholesterol piece, there's this great infographic that I saw, and it really starts to look at plaque buildup in your veins as you get older. And it's like in your 20s, not much there. 30s there, you start to see it. 40s, it kind of just, and it gets to the point that atherosclerosis can become a cardiovascular incident waiting to happen. And the interesting thing is that I saw this particular infographic at a sex education talk, and it was really looking at kind of erectile dysfunction in men being the canary in the coal mine. And you see that the veins in the penis are a lot smaller, so they're representative of what could be a cardiovascular incident down the road. So we really start to look at omegas as this. If we get out in front of that and we start attacking atherosclerosis and really looking at cardiovascular health, there's some systemic benefits in the bedroom outside of that, but that kind of becomes that canary in the coal mine. Like, how are our diets, how are our lifestyles, how are our own microbiome impacting what's going on in our veins?
Better sex life. Just go take them.
Yeah. Drop the mic and walk.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I'm in. But so on the performance side, I think also the inflammation piece. But is there like a spike in all of? Is it something that they're going to see just kind of gradually? What the study that you guys did, it was on recovery, right?
Not specifically. We're looking at oxidative stress and inflammation post-exercise to see if taking EPA and DHA in high amounts, we're taking about 4 grams total per day, would cause an attenuation. So basically, would it decrease the rate at which oxidative stress and inflammation increase following like an hour-long 25% of your body weight backpack carry? So I'm 200 pounds, 50-pound backpack carry uphill for an hour. That's going to cause some amount of oxidative stress and inflammation, but for the group that supplemented, would they get less over time? Everyone's still going to get some. What we found is that the group that supplemented, they started off with a lot lower amounts. You were talking about CRP a second ago. That like their CRP went to like half, but it went up at about the same rate. So it didn't attenuate the rate at which their inflammation kicked in. They just started with a lower amount, so they ended up with a lower amount.
Gotcha.
Why'd you ask though?
Well,
there's going to be a test.
Yeah,
on that later.
yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, hold on. No, I was wanting, so like the performance thing, like it always kind of geeks me out because I feel like general health and longevity, it's like just let's do this thing. But what is the difference between kind of working with somebody that's training really hard, like they're not normal people, and normal people can have really good biomarkers and feel really healthy and live in less pain, and it's going to work, and it's a system approach, and everyone should be doing it. But when you start to throw in high-level training, or not even high-level, but people that are genuinely interested in lifting heavier weights, moving faster, it becomes a different system that you're working with, and you're working with someone that's pushing the limits of this. And how can they start to understand the benefits of, you know, where are they going in their training, and by supplementing with this, what can they expect to see, and how is it kind of helping just benefit their progress?
That's a great question, a really great question, and I think it always comes back to there's no one size fits all on all of this, right? So I really look at some of the diagnostic tests, kind of coming back to those as where do you want to go? Let's look at where you're at now, and then kind of build a roadmap to it. You know, take a look at your microbiome, your omega index. And then figure out, okay, you know, your C-reactive protein is here. You know, right now, maybe you want to get into a really heavy CrossFit. Maybe you want to qualify for games. You know what you need to do in the gym to get there, but maybe you're starting off with some issues. Maybe you have high homocysteine C-reactive proteins. We talk a lot about MTHFR mutations, right? It's, I think, estimated that 45% of the global population has this weird mutation that can cause elevated homocysteine. Now, that means you're just not recovering as quickly in the gym. So it means a lot of other things, but that's one of the key components is that you might just not be recovering as well as you should. And we talk a lot about that in prenatal, but that's a big issue for anyone who's really trying to maximize their stuff in the gym. So I think when you look at this kind of holistic approach, it's like, where are you at? Where do you want to go? And how does any kind of supplementation fit into that? You know, you just have to understand what your unique body chemistry has going for it. By and large, omegas are one of those great things that no one's ever taken an omega and gone into like anaphylactic shock, at least not that I know of. So it's, I never like to say that it's good for everybody, but it's one of those great products where very few people are going to have a negative reaction to it unless you take 20 pills and you shit yourself.
Yep.
Short term.
Short-term problem.
Short-term, yeah.
Long-term.
Yeah.
Long-term learning, though. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
I mean, if you take super high amounts, are there really many downsides? Like if we talk about 3 grams being a lot, like if you took 30 grams, is there a big downside physiologically?
I think one of the issues, and interestingly enough, ACOG, the American College of OBGYNs, at one point had kind of recommended removing all of the fat-soluble vitamins from prenatal because if you start to take them in excess, then you end up with these fat solubles that are sitting there, and then they could ultimately go rancid in your system. So you looked at fetal toxicity as being one of the issues that came from that. I look at it, if you're if I take 30 times the amount of vitamin C that I'm supposed to take. I'm just going to pee it out. If I take 30 times the amount of fish oil, that's going to sit somewhere here in the system, and what's that eventually going to do? One of the interesting things, there was a study, and it's kind of being validated right now, that people who are taking super high levels of EPA had a higher risk of prostate cancer. And so that's one of those things that I look at is, if you're taking way too much, is it just sitting there and ultimately there's a physiological impact to some other system? So again, it's not that I'm just going to go take my fish oil. It's like I'm going to take my fish oil, my good fish oil, and then I'm going to check that against some of the other things that I need to really look at in my life, which are, your microbiome, your omega indexes, and just even some of your reactive protein tests that are going to really kind of be a good indication of what's going on in your system. So if you want to be that competitive athlete, if you want to take your game to the next level, it's not just go to the vitamin shop, go to GNC, and let some minimum wage guy say, take these supplements.
Yeah.
It's actually, look at it from the science perspective. Know your body, know what you're putting into it, know what you want to get out of it, and make sure, you're kind of bridging the gap in that equation on what goes in, what has to come out, and put the good stuff in.
Where's the conversation going with fish oils? We mentioned earlier how krill oil is kind of taken a little bit of it's very popular right now. But where's the conversation going in the research?
The research is really headed towards everything algae-based, right? I mean, let's be honest. We've kind of cocked up our oceans. It's impossible to turn on the news these days and not talk about the giant floating plastic island.
Ocean acidification too.
Yeah.
Big one.
We've got rising ocean temperatures. That's impacting what the actual omega construct in these fish are. It's not just standard at that 1812. We're starting to see some variances in that. There are Japanese fish oil manufacturers that are literally running Geiger counters over their fish right now because of Fukushima. So we've got some serious issues in the supply chain that I think right now are manageable. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's going to be a whole different ballgame. So we're really looking a lot at the algae-based stuff. Algae is great for DHA, so you see it a lot. We've been able to concentrate up DHA from algae. EPA is still kind of that moving target, so the science geeks are working hard on it. It's close, but it's not there yet. And I think what we're really going to start to see, too, is kind of this synergistic impact of maybe decreasing the amount of omegas and starting to increase the amount of things like CBD, where we've got this holistic impact on the endocannabinoid system. And there's a lot of research that really shows that omegas are good for the endocannabinoid system. And now that CBD is becoming a lot more mainstream, I think combination products like that are really going to be the future.
I mean, CBD is like just crazy on the rise right now. It's getting more and more and more popular, but it seems still in some sense to be debatable, where some people think it's amazing and other people don't like it for all kinds of reasons that oftentimes have nothing to do with like the physiological health of the product. But in your mind, do you know a lot about CBD?
I've devoted the last couple of years of my life to being a CBD encyclopedia.
Okay,
Let's
perfect.
do it.
Okay, let's talk about CBD for a minute.
Here we go. So we'll come back to fish oils, people. But we're going to talk about CBD.
Yeah. So what is it, and like why has it gotten so popular? Like, what are the benefits to CBD?
So, let's start with let's go way back in time, right? I mean, this is like the first medicinal compound on the planet. I mean, there's stuff that shows it was used in India 10,000 years ago, China 5,000 years ago. I mean, this is really one of those things that has a long and robust history. And unfortunately, George Washington grew this shit in his front yard, right? So in the 1930s, as a result of the plastics companies, the rope companies, and basically kind of a reverse immigration policy, marijuana and subsequently CBD became like this scapegoat. And interesting enough, when you look at the history, there's this whole thing about how there was a concern that Mexican men were going to come over the border and get drunk and start harassing white women. So they made marijuana the catalyst to basically detain people and send them back across the border. Kind of an interesting political thing, which we won't even get into.
It's like a way to be racist without being racist.
Exactly, yeah. Sounds somewhat similar to what's Anyway. So then all of a sudden marijuana and then subsequently CBD get thrown on this DEA list as like a Schedule I drug with heroin and cocaine. CBD basically is one of 113 phytocannabinoids that is sourced from hemp, the hemp plant. The two most prevalent of those phytocannabinoids, THC and CBD. So to really get CBD legally into the country or to be able to sell it, you have to have THC below 0.3%, which wouldn't show up on a drug test. It wouldn't, that's the psychoactive component. That's the thing that's going to get you high. That's going to have you at 7-Eleven getting nachos at 3 a.m.
It's good at that.
Yeah, it's very good at that.
So when you get rid of that THC, now you have CBD, which has all of these incredible implications for health and wellness. And what it does is impact the endocannabinoid system, which is this thing that basically exists in your brain and your peripheral nervous system. And when we really look at what CBD does, it unfortunately has become a catch-all for everything because it does so much and because the research has been very limited due to its legal status. It's become that catch-all, right? Now it's like, I don't know what CBD does, so it does everything. It's good for inflammation. It's good for back pain. It's good for cancer. It's like, it grow my hair, it remove my third nut.
Is that real? I could use some hair.
Me too.
I could use a third nut.
I could use a third nut.
So many benefits.
So many benefits.
Let's start drinking it.
I'll send you some of that too. But really, when we talk about sports performance, when we talk about inflammation, there's some incredible research that shows, post-exercise inflammation. It's great for that. It's great for really impacting the peripheral nervous system. So kind of that mind-body connection, as we start to get older, nerve conduction velocity decreases, cell-to-cell communication decreases. It seems to have a pretty profound impact on that. So, as you're starting to get gassed, as you've done your, 10th rep or something like that, you're going to have a little bit more in the tank as a result of some of this stuff. And again, there's a lot more research that needs to be done on it, but an incredibly cool product. And I think one of the things that obviously it's on track to be a $3 billion business in the U.S. alone next year. I'm really looking forward to a lot of the research, a lot of which I'm participating in. Omax has got a product coming out next month, which is a combination of CBD, omegas, and theanine. So we talk a lot about social anxiety disorder, basically just needing to unplug and taking it's a chill pill, which is.
Yeah. You mentioned combining these two things together.
Mm-hmm.
What is the process of that? And are you guys working on what is like a right way to go about that? I've never even heard of combining those two together.
Yeah, that's another great question. So, there's some people that will just throw stuff in a soft gel in their garage and or put it in a gel cap or a capsule and sell it online. Really, for me, it's always the focus on quality and it's the focus on the process, right? So, interestingly enough, CBD oil is very temperamental to work with. It's not just this oil like fish where it comes out looking pretty. It's actually very goopy and gelatin. It's a pain in the ass to work with. So, part of it is creating a structure and a process to really, bind these two ingredients together and to make sure that every gel cap, every soft gel has exactly what you want it to do. But bioavailability is a big thing for me. So I always talk about structured lipids, putting in something like a phosphatidylcholine, an alpha GPC, a phosphatidylserine. So you have these binding agents that aren't just fillers, aren't just crap, but really allow that particular product to improve its efficacy, simply with just minor tweaks like that. So this particular product I love. Great clinical research right now on omegas and the endocannabinoid system, this whole system throughout your body that seems to really respond to CBD, but also to omegas. So you kind of have this cool synergistic benefit.
Can you dig into the endocannabinoid system?
Yes.
It's kind of like a...
When I went through cellular nutrition in college, or
Nobody
graduate school, no mention.
Yeah.
It seems to be a relatively new thing that's hot in pop culture.
It is, yeah, and it's it's funny. It's become very hot. People are talking about it. Half the people can't even say it. I couldn't for a while. I'm like what? What is that?
Cannabinoid. It sounds like cannabis.
This guy's
I
trying
should
to sell
have
me
it.
something. And what?
I was like, you just made that word up. So yeah, the endocannabinoid system, and really it's this. I've got this great infographic. I wish I would have had it, but you really
we can stick it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Cool. I'd love to. But really, you look at this system in your body that really it's part of your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system, and it's responsible for a whole host of things, but really inflammation resolution seems to be one of those. Stress modulation. So we always talk about anti-inflammatory, but I don't like that word. I like inflammation resolution, right? Because some inflammation is great. It's how quickly do you resolve that that inflammation, bring yourself back to homeostasis. That's really the kind of the marker of success in your body.
That's like similar to what people say about getting in shape. It's not that you don't get tired when you work out. It's that once you stop working out, a lot of people that are in really good shape, they kind of come back to normal very, very quickly. Like you recover very fast. I feel like that was a similar analogy.
I think that's a perfect analogy, and I think that's great, because once your body is used to that, your body knows how to return itself to homeostasis quicker. So acute inflammation, and I always look at it in the sense of if I get a cut, right, that's acute inflammation. I'm going to swell a little bit either internally. My immune system is going to go to try to tackle that. Now, if my system is bogged down with so many things, bad food, bad diet, not enough of the good stuff in my system, that acute inflammation can become chronic, and chronic is basically disease. So you look at the endocannabinoid system, and part of what that does is really modulating stress and inflammation so that you can tackle acute inflammation before it becomes chronic.
Got it. I think.
Now, let's talk about that as it pertains to working out, right?
Yeah.
If you're really busting your ass in the gym, you're going to have a whole lot of inflammation in your system, and those are...
Inflammation isn't always bad.
Not
There's
at
a
all.
reason inflammation exists.
Yeah.
It's your body protecting it. It's what you talked about. How well are you processing it to get rid of the inflammation? But it needs to be there. We shouldn't just throw out inflammation as if it's like this awful thing that exists in your body and we need to just completely eliminate it forever. Like, there's a reason that it happens.
It's a part of your natural recovery process. Like, I've heard research that has been done on, you mentioned NSAIDs earlier, like ibuprofen and things like that. Like, you take a lot of ibuprofen post-workout, and what the research shows is that you recover, or you build muscle to a lesser extent than if you didn't take ibuprofen. So you're taking something that's anti-inflammatory, but it's actually hurting your recovery, even though it makes you feel better probably.
And the whole RICE protocol is built on stopping inflammation, which you're just kind of freezing that body part or wherever the inflammation is. And it's your body's rushing new blood there. It's swelling because it's trying to protect that. So it's not, let's just end inflammation. You actually need it. It's the chronic inflammation that you were talking about that really is what we're trying to fight.
Were those things accurate, what we just said about, about NSAIDs post-workout and or icing post-workout and muscle recovery?
Yeah. Yeah, and both of those, and I think that there's some the NSAIDs to me are we need to get off of those. We look at what it's doing to our livers, what it's doing to our bodies, and the problem is that if I've got a massive headache, I'm going to go for one of those, but we've just become such a pill popping society where it's like, oh, I've got just the tiniest amount of pain, I'm going to go to those. And I think it's created, unfortunately, a generation of people who they go to the gym and they have that post exercise muscle soreness, the good stuff, the thing says, I'm alive, I busted my ass in the gym, my body's recovering, what can I do to help my body recover? People are like, and rather than doing it with food, with supplements, with any number of different therapies that can really help that, they go pop those pills. And so, the research is absolutely clear on that. Don't do it. The ice thing, that's kind of interesting. We've got the whole XPT. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Andy Galpin, one of our co-hosts, is a part of their staff. He goes out to their events. I don't know if he's actually on staff, but he goes out to their events all the time and does a lot of that stuff with Brian McKenzie and Laird.
Cool.
Yep.
And I think we're scheduled to do something with them as well. So I'm kind of stoked because I've always loved ice. For me, it's like that's a great way to to tackle inflammation. Do it in a natural way without going to chemicals. But I still think ultimately your body needs to teach itself how to heal, and it does that with good food, with good supplements, and a lifestyle that's not based off of putting crap into your system.
Yeah, I think a little bit of the history. It's Gary Ryan. I'm gonna butcher his last name. I just heard an interview with him recently, actually, and he was talking about how the RICE protocol was just kind of created to solve a problem that they were solving the wrong problem, and it was kind of more blunt trauma, and I think a lot of it was if you're lose an appendage or something, freeze the thing and then bring it in, and it was inflammation, this must work, and then the compression is keeping the blood away, so the swelling goes down. It's we might actually want to get new blood there, so the heat, we're gonna have him on the show so I can actually get that right. But
let's do it. I have a question about back on the fish oil topic. I remember years ago I was talking to someone who's a part of a veterinary journal, and they were saying that with respect to animals, so this wasn't in human populations, this was looking at dogs and monkeys and whatnot, they were using fish oil to help with things like ectopic dermatitis and skin conditions. Has there been much research on humans regarding skin health in omega-3s?
There's been a lot of research on it. I think a lot of it is outside of the scope because I really haven't spent a lot of time looking at fish oil for skin, but I know that there's a lot of benefits there. And I know a lot of that animal research, interestingly enough, because we do talk a lot about animal research and omegas. And, anyone who has pets, it's my recommendation is put your dog on a fish oil. A high quality one, because it's interesting is the inflammatory response in pets is so much higher than it is in humans, and that's why like all of a sudden people talk about it's like my dog was great, and then one day it's just he got sick, and then it's like boom, and so once that inflammatory process takes place in a dog, it's like it's so hard to bring them back to homeostasis. So we really look at like fish oil. CBD is a huge one. Pot for pets is one of the fastest growing categories.
Pot for
right now.
pets. I hadn't heard of this yet. What a genius idea. Those guys have to be fucking smashing it right now.
Yeah, they are.
It's the happiest dogs ever. No barking.
They're so happy.
Why is this dog sleeping all day? Well, we got to hide
he's so healthy.
Every morning we just feed it a brownie.
He won't stop watching Dude, Where's My Car and laughing his ass off. The greatest dog ever.
I love that there's a pet market for that. Well, yeah, your pet's not supposed to be in a house all day. Your dog is supposed to be out hunting.
Yeah.
It's not a freaking house thing sitting there in its little comfy bed.
Watching Dude, Where's My Car?
No. It's supposed to be outside with its dudes hunting.
Yeah.
Little
Pack animals.
Yeah.
Peeing on things.
Get your dog out of the house. Let it be an animal. How long did it take before a wolf turned into a poodle?
How long did
Is
it
that a
take?
thing?
How long did it take for a wolf to be, turn into something that you can take on a plane?
Oh my God! What happens when the dog has to shit on the plane? This has to happen at least 1,000 times a day, right?
Don't give your dog fish oil if you're going to take it on a plane.
Oh, there's the big lesson.
Wait until your
of the
friend's
day.
going to go on a plane with his dog and give him like 30 pills.
Yeah, like, these would be good for your
Just
dog.
wait to hear the story.
He told us, listen to this interview. I'm serious. He said, listen, put the dog. 20 is a good number.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
So earlier you were talking about erectile dysfunction and cognition and having, you were talking about erectile dysfunction being the canary in the coal mine with having a potential cardiac event, heart attack, et cetera, later on down the road. So do omega-3s help with just circulation in general?
Yeah, there's and there's some evidence that suggests that omegas are not only a blood thinner, but they can help with vasodilation, things like that. So, again, if you've gone too far down that road where atherosclerosis has really kicked in and you've got severe plaque buildup, just taking an omega supplement isn't going to reverse that. But that's why I always say get on it early, right? I mean, you really look at this infographic, and we can put that on the site. That's an interesting thing for men and women to start to see in their 20s and 30s. It's like, it starts then, and you might not see the ramifications of that until 30 years down the road. But by that point, you've missed out on all of that opportunity to do something about it. So when we start talking about healthy blood flow, preventing plaque, arterial plaque buildup, that's where it can really have a profound impact. And I always say it's like, I thought of my grandmother, God, best woman I've ever known in my entire life. But one of the most traumatic experiences in my entire existence was her coming at me with cod liver oil when I was like 7.
Yeah.
And like that was the worst. Like I barfed. It's just that rancid, fishy. Ugh.
It sticks with you all day.
It does,
Yeah.
and it stuck with me for years, and to the point where it's like I got into the health space, and I fundamentally understood all of the benefits of these PUFAs, these polyunsaturated fatty acids. And I still didn't do it. I was like mentally blocked, and I'm like, in my 20s, I don't need that. I'm immortal. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, no, that's not the case. It's like start a journey now, so you're not paying for it later on. And when we really look at the benefits, sometimes it's hitting your ego, right? It's like if you want to compete in your CrossFit games, you want to take your game to the next level, start looking at some supplementation that's outside of that traditional, I think, what a lot of people are looking at in supplements.
What are you looking for? Like you seem to be kind of at the forefront of it was the fish oils and still is fish oils, but leading into the CBDs and put that message pushing forward. Where's the conversation, or what are you kind of trying to help everybody understand?
Well, the next evolution, that's an awesome question, and I would definitely be on the lookout for this, is pro-resolving mediators.
Whoa.
Dang, he gave you a real answer.
Bam!
Check
Here we
that
go.
out.
Pro-resolving mediators.
So
I like that.
So Metagenics has a product on the market, and it's their specialized pro-resolving mediators. Do you know who Dr. Jeff Bland is? He's considered like the father of functional medicine, and he was one of the ones back in the 60s and 70s that really wanted to take a more holistic approach to healthcare. And then he, founded Metagenics, has really had a profound impact on supplements being a major therapy for doctors when it comes to treating disease. One of their biggest selling products over the last year or so has been these specialized pro-resolving mediators. And he talks about it in the sense that for years we've known that omegas are good for you. Now we know why. So what we're able to do with fish oil is we're actually able to break it down into these fractions, and these fractions have really unique impact on the biomechanics of our cells, of our just the physiological way that they work. So they're downstream metabolites of fish oil. So as we get closer to their actual root source of what they're supposed to do, we kind of eliminate a lot of the processing, that kind of goes into place. So we're starting to see some really cool clinical research coming out on these pro-resolving mediators. So it's something, I mean, give it a year and you're going to see them all over the place, but they're incredible.
So with EPA, it's like the precursor to releasing eicosanoids, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, things like that. Like, can you supplement directly with those anti-inflammatory molecules?
Those are those SPMs that we're talking about. So
okay.
you literally just went right down that road, and those are those resolvins, the protectins, the myrisins, all of those. It's those downstream metabolites. So the problem is that they're really unstable, right? So what we're finding is the development process. The second you introduce them to heat, forget about it; they're gone. So we're really having to create some unique and novel ways to extract those things, get closer to the source, getting rid of the omegas itself, and just having these really unique constituent parts of the fish oil that have these incredible inflammatory response effects. So yeah, it's not there 100% commercially viable yet, but give it a year or so, and I think you're going to see some really cool things. And I look at it from my performance in the gym. I've been playing with some of these things, and I notice a huge impact.
So being a subject matter expert in this whole category, like we've touched on many things that are like pretty standard to the fish oil conversation. Like, is there anything in your mind that we should be talking about that we just haven't touched on yet? Like, what are the things that people need to focus on, but it's just not a part of mainstream conversation?
That's a great question. Wow. Well, I think we talked a lot about what you shouldn't be doing, and that's really getting the cheap stuff. How negative that can be. I think the funny thing is, right, is that everyone's always known that fish oil is good for you. That seems to be kind of interwoven into our culture. People recognize the inherent benefits, but they don't necessarily know why. So now, part of my pulpit, what I want to jump on, is really to educate the average consumer about what they should be taking. Don't let Larry King sell you on some green lip muscle BS. I just sorry Larry. It's let's look at the real science. Let's take a look at the clinical evidence and really apply that to the supplements that we're going to be doing. So to me, it's the 1-to-1, right? That's my big thing. Now there's some other ones like the 4-to-1 that OMAC sells. I think that's a great product. Getting into these specialized pro-resolving mediators, looking at combo products, things that are synergistic, omegas with phospholipids, whether that's a GPC, something like that, really elevating the efficacy of your omegas when you take them. So there's some great like omegas astaxanthin combinations. Those are kind of cool. For me, it's like don't take too much of that, especially with guys, because there's some science that says that too much astaxanthin for a guy can lead to erectile dysfunction. So maybe that's once a week type of pill, but
is that just in there to help keep it from going rancid, like putting vitamin E in other oils?
Kind of, but the astaxanthin also works as an active transport mechanism. So you have that phospholipid carrier that's going to help bioavailability of your omegas. So I always look at it like, what's your goal, right? That omega index. And I'm kind of I'm one of those guys, like, I don't, like you, I'm going to 10x something. It's like, if you tell me it's going to take a year to get my omega score up, no, I can do it in 2 months. So,
totally.
I'm going to shit myself first, and let's go back to the drawing board and figure out what can I take.
Find your high limit, back it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what
20 pills today? Okay, only 19 tomorrow.
We're going to work, but, what can you take that actually improves the efficacy of that? I also, multi-mode of action, right? That's the big thing for me is, I was at the airport the other day, and I saw this older couple, and they had like that suitcase. You remember Bill Romanowski from the Broncos?
Yeah.
He had that like suitcase of supplements, right? And this couple had that, and I'm looking, I'm like, what could you possibly be taking? And so for me, it's like less is more. We should be able to decrease our supplementation, focus on high impact, high quality supplements like a fish oil, maybe married with the GPC. I think that's a great concept.
That's actually something I'd like to dig into as well, the alpha GPC component, because I feel like I keep hearing more and more about that over the last couple of years as well, but I don't know as much about it.
So GPC, interestingly enough, it's a active pharmaceutical ingredient used in Europe for Alzheimer's and dementia medication. And it's also actually used intravenously to help people come out of surgery. So, out of anesthesia. So it's got this brain boosting impact without being a cardiovascular stimulant, which could be detrimental to someone who just had surgery. So now here's the really cool thing, right? That European Food Safety Agency report that talked about healthy breastfeeding said that the predominant choline source found in breast milk is alpha GPC. So when you pair that with a DHA, you have this really cool multi-mode of action, right? It's a water phase phospholipid that you've just paired with a lipophilic product. So you've kind of created this emulsion in your system. GPC typically is converted in your system back to phosphatidylcholine DHA. So we've eliminated a lot of the energy conversion in your system by pairing these two together. So DHA will actually bind with the GPC and get across your blood-brain barrier even faster. So you have this like instant cognitive boost within like 60 minutes. So typically when you look at cognition and, omegas, that's not something that happens. You're like, oh, I'm feeling a little foggy today. Let me pop my omegas and I'm going to feel better. Doesn't happen. With this particular construct, it absolutely does. There's a whole litany of things that GPC is good for. A lot of the clinical research has been done on power output. So you see it helping increase growth hormone. It works for mind, muscle, a lot of the things that we really want in sports nutrition. So it's always been used as a sports nutrition product here in the U.S. But, like growth hormone, cell-to-cell communication, nerve conduction velocity. All the things that we want in the gym. But then we also want when we're sitting at our desk trying to be smart, trying to craft those emails, when it's 3 o'clock and we're like, ah, man, I'm toast. I need my, fourth cup of coffee or whatever it is. It's a lot of, a lot of that can be counteracted with GPC, and especially when you bind it with an omega.
So for something like egg yolks that has a lot of choline in it, has a lot of phosphatidylcholine, which is what makes it possible to create an emulsion. If you were making mayonnaise or something like that, you put an egg yolk in there to help that with that fat oil mixture. Eating egg yolks, if choline is like one of the things we're looking for, is that something that you can get enough choline by eating 3 to 5 eggs a day to get those cognition benefits?
You can. Now there's a couple different ways, a couple different modes of action on this one, right? So straight choline has a different mode of action than like phosphatidylcholine or GPC. So you have to look at them. I love eggs for their phosphatidylcholine benefit. If you look at a lot of supplements now, it's choline bitartrate, right? Choline salts. All of the clinical evidence shows zero impact on brain metabolism. So they're great for other bodily functions, but when you really want something going on upstairs, eggs are great. Now the phosphatidylcholine weight by weight basis, I think is right around 21%. So you go to like a GPC and that's like 40%. So you're just getting more or a higher concentration of that specific GPC, but you're getting something that crosses the blood-brain barrier quicker and is almost an immediate precursor to acetylcholine, which is, a neurotransmitter. So you kind of get the speed going upstairs a little bit faster with a GPC versus a PC, but they're all great products. So I would say, I love my eggs, and my daughter, I think, she'd just eat eggs 24/7 if she could.
Yeah.
She's like Cool Hand Luke.
That's what he does.
Right.
Colton's all about some eggs.
Yeah.
Dude, the Costco egg.
Let's turn that thing around so they can see what this
They
shredded
don't
physique.
need to know.
He's so tan. So many veins.
It'd just be a letdown if he turned the camera around. We've built him up so much from this side, they don't need to know.
No one actually knows that he's a gamer and he's like 315 pounds. he's never set foot in a gym outside of recording our show.
Oh, it's awesome. This was awesome. I love having guests on where I leave with no questions left. You pretty much got all the fish oil questions I could ever come up with, and it was awesome. I appreciate it.
My daughter was sick last night. She's suffering from some pretty bad allergies, so I might have had some serious ADD in this conversation.
It's perfect.
I might have been a pinball today.
We got all of it. Where can people find you?
Omax, well, let's talk about the products, right?
Let's do it.
So omaxhealth.com, you're going to see the omegas, you're going to see the alpha GPC product, you're going to see the CBD product. Definitely excited about that one. So,
and you had a big hand in the development of these products?
I developed them all.
Right.
Yeah, so those were kind of my...
The hand.
I did it.
That came out a little, yeah.
No, you're good.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Like,
yeah.
were you the one that developed the products, or was that a team that you oversaw, or just what's the story there?
No. The Alpha and Omega, as I said, that was something that I created for prenatal vitamins, and what we found out to really come full circle is that DHA and that GPC is something that we don't want to just stop that when we're done breastfeeding. We want to carry that forward all the stages of our life. So You know, it was something I really wanted to take. I'm always, you know, my grandfather had Alzheimer's. He had dementia. You know, he also was in the 60s. He had a painting and a painting company and a gas station. So he had severe lead poisoning, you know, heavy metal toxins, things like that. So I've always been cognizant of cognitive decline, and wanted to do everything that I could to kind of prevent that. So this was not just for my daughter, it was also for me, and I've really kind of made this a platform for myself when we talk about brain health. If you see that on the, if you see that particular product on the OMAX site, you'll also be able to see the book that I wrote on. It's called 30 Days to a Better Brain, but it's just tips and tricks to really start optimizing your brain function. Make sure that you're not, you know, falling asleep at the wheel, so to speak, when it comes to brain health. So yeah, that's that's product, and then the CBD thing is something that I've really become passionate about. And it was interesting too, is with CBD. I, like a lot of people, you know, kind of growing up in sports, kind of equated CBD with marijuana. So I'm like, no, that's a no-go.
Yeah.
You know, playing sports in high school and college, it's like, you get caught with that stuff, you're done. So then all of a sudden CBD came out. I'm like, nope, it's marijuana. I'm not going to touch it. And then it took me a long time to really look at the research and say, this is not marijuana. This is not what society had kind of demonized. This is a really therapeutic product. There's a lot of cool things that we can do with this. So I'm really excited for people to get their hands on that one. And when we talk about social anxiety disorder, I mean, hell, I think FOMO is now like a clinical term, right? I mean, that's asinine. But, you know, the fact that we have these issues, I think is just proof positive that we need products that can really address issues associated with the modern lifestyle.
Yeah, I love that you guys are coming, and you're so well versed in the science and clinical side of it, just backing the products. And we're super excited to be working with you guys.
It's been awesome,
cool.
guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we just started this fun partnership, and just the products you guys have been putting out. It's really awesome to be able to do this with you. Cool. Anything else? Omax.com.
Omax.com. You can catch me, you know, Evan_Demarco on Instagram. You can see
there it is. There's always an Instagram.
So,
There it is.
I'm an Instagram model.
Yeah. Colton will be doing a photo shoot with you shortly.
That's right.
I don't have any followers, but I'm an Instagram model.
But yeah, as long as you're taking nice pictures and posting them, you're modeling something.
Yeah.
You know? Or go no clothes and model nothing.
There's a couple of those on there as well.
Doug,
Yeah.
where can people find you?
Evan, this was super cool. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
You can find me on Instagram at Douglas E. Larson, and, of course, everything Shrug Collective.
Yeah. Make sure you go and follow Mr. Fitzby at FitzbyCo. He's got a sweet shirt on today that has most of the threads still on it, no holes in it, but definitely wearing women's joggers, and that's important.
And I don't know what's on under that, but
But he pulls it off well.
100% women's clothes.
He wears it well.
At Colton Duncan J. Is that right? At FitzbyCo. Go and hang out with him. I'm at Anders Varner on all the things. And most importantly, get into iTunes. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, share all of these podcasts, all the fish oils, all the CBDs. Get into YouTube, subscribe, leave us a comment, 5-star review on iTunes, and we will see you next Wednesday.
thanks for making it all the way to the end of the show. If you liked the show, which I know you did, please go share it on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever social media channel you happen to be loving at the moment. Pinterest, Twitter,
Tumblr.
Tumblr. Share it on Tumblr.